Hello everyone, welcome to phase 1, simplest hack ever. So a disclaimer, the following workshop will be recorded and shared. We will not be recording anyone's video except the presenter's screen, but sound, so any questions you ask will be a part of the recording. The cmd-f team would like to acknowledge that female or woman is not an accurate description for many people and it may make some feel unwelcome. We use the asterisks to specifically and intentionally include cis and trans women as well as non-binary, agender, and intersex people. So who are we? We are British Columbia's first all-women hackathon, established in 2019, and our values include learning, building confidence, women supporting women, and right now we're hosting a bunch of workshops called phases prior to our annual cmd-f hackathon. So a bit about our team. We have Joyce, our director, Stephanie, and shooting logistics coordinator, and myself, I'm Christy, also a logistics coordinator, and I will be the host today for phase 1. And for our TAs, we have Anne, Jackie, Ian, JP, Carmen, and Maggie. So welcome to phase 1, and these are all of the different things you will be learning today, the different technologies. But before we get started, so we will be using the Slack workspace to answer questions and assign one-on-one help for breakout rooms. Message question in caps with your question after it, and one of the TAs will reply to you in the chat or in the thread. If you are stuck, your code isn't running, or something wonky is happening, message help in caps and you will be in line for the next available TA in a breakout room to help you out with debugging the problem. And during parts of the workshop, there will be moments where we will be installing things and it might take a second. So how it's gonna work is I'll have everyone install what we need to install and I'll go back to our slides and explain exactly what is happening. And now, we're gonna try checking out if everyone has everything installed properly first. So open up your VSCode. Hopefully everyone has that. If you don't, please take time to install it now and check that you can actually open it. And then what I want you to do is type this following code into your terminal or PowerShell. So before we actually get to that, I'd like everyone to pull out their code snippets document. So I'm gonna give like 10 seconds. Everyone can pull it out and open up the VS Code. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paste this code into my terminal. So here at VS Code, how I access my terminal is I go up, for Mac users, you go up to the top, it says terminal, you click new terminal, and this little box, or it depends on the size, you can adjust it here. This should pop up. And what I'm gonna do is with that copied snippet of code, I'm gonna paste it into my terminal to run this. So what this is checking is I'm asking it to return me the version of Node, which was asked to be installed inside the pre-workshop materials. So if you do already have this installed properly, you will see this version number. And if anyone doesn't see that, please go back to the pre-workshop materials and follow those instructions to install Node because that's required for the project to work out. And now I'm going to go back. I'm going to check for NPM as well. So this is our Node package manager, and I'll explain later exactly what these are again. So here I also have a version number, so that means I have it installed properly. And finally, this was optional if you chose to do the last step in the pre-workshop materials for deployment. Then we're going to check for Heroku just to make sure you can deploy your app later. And again, there should be a version number that appears. And if anyone doesn't have that, please message in the Slack space if you need help on getting those. All right, now moving on. So we're gonna look at our workshop timeline. So what we're gonna start off with is talking about what we will be learning today. Then we're gonna get straight into coding with the boilerplate React code. We're gonna take a break for 5 minutes, and we're gonna add some more personalization to the code. And there will be a 10-minute break, so maybe grab some water, grab some snacks. And finally, there's gonna be deployment, which is optional. And you can really only do this if you finish the pre-rec and the pre-workshop materials, which are optional. But yeah, this will be fun. And then we'll be wrapping it up with some conclusions. And that is our timeline. So what will we be learning today? This is our final product. and I'll do a quick demo. All right. My Zoom thing is in the way. You know what? I'll open a new tab. All right. So basically what this is, it's a static website. And what that means is it doesn't really like update anything or is connected to a backend or anything at all. And what we are able to do is we have a text field here as well as a display message at the bottom. And once you change anything in the text field, it'll change the display text here. You can say hello anything. So this is just a very simple app that will teach you concepts of React, just setting up an environment as well as a very simple deployment. Now back to our slides. All right. So what is React? React is a framework, which means an abstraction in which software providing generic functionality can be selectively changed by additional user-written code. Therefore, it provides an application-specific software, and it is created by Facebook. It is an open source JavaScript library that is used for building user interfaces specifically for single-page applications. And it allows developers to create large web apps that can change data without reloading the page, which is actually really important. And the main purpose of React is to be fast, scalable, and simple. So you can think of React as someone setting up your notebook for you before you start drawing, and the built-in components are the basic shapes that you normally sketch and continue modifying to create your picture. And a little bit more about React. So all React apps are built off of multiple components. If we looked back at that site that we made, there's the text box component and there's the message component, and there's also like an app bar at the top, which is just like the little blue bar. And a component is a JavaScript class or function that can accept inputs such as props and return a React element. A React element basically helps to describe how a section or the specific component of the UI should appear on the web page. So it describes what each thing on the web page should be rendered as. React doesn't use straight JavaScript, but instead uses something called JSX. And JSX is just JavaScript and HTML mushed together, and its purpose is solely to make creating the React components easier. Industry is also moving towards using TSX for React apps, which is just a combination of TypeScript and HTML. So why should we choose to use React for hackathons? There are many pre-built components from UI frameworks such as Material UI by Google and Fluent UI by Microsoft. And during a hackathon, you might not have as much time to design everything from scratch, or you might not even have a designer on your team. So it's nice to be able to work off of the pre-existing components from those frameworks. If you do want to keep working on your project after the hackathon, it is also very easy to expand on it and refine it to do even cooler things. React is used commonly in the industry, so it's very easy to ask for help since mentors or other hackers around you most likely are using it or have used it. All right, now we're gonna get straight into the coding. So if you don't have your code snippet sheet out yet, now's the time to like definitely bring that out. So what we're gonna do is refer back to our code snippet sheet. We're at the Getting React template part. So before we actually copy code, what I want you to do is open up your folder or like your file explorer, and I want you to create a new folder. I'm gonna call mine Workshop. And now I have a new folder called Workshop. And once you have that folder created, you're gonna go into your VS Code. What we're gonna do is try to open that folder so that our environment is within that folder. So I click Open Folder right there, and I will navigate to wherever I created that folder. So mine is called Workshop right here. And I open it. All right, now you should see that your editor here says the name of the folder that you just opened. And if you are able to open terminal again, pull that up. And this time I want you to notice that here at the terminal, it should say exactly where you're located in your file path. So I am inside that folder. For Windows users, you should have like a bunch of the sideways arrows that lead to like exactly where your file path is, and it should point to whatever folder you just created. And I'll give 5 seconds for everyone to catch up from there. And now what I will do is copy and paste this first line of code. And I'll put it in and press enter on my terminal. All right, so this is actually going to take a while to install, and I'll just kind of explain what's happening here. So npx is a npm package runner. The X probably stands for execute in npx. So a typical use of npx is to download and run a package temporarily or for trials. So basically one-time use sort of thing. Create React app is an npm package that is expected to be run only once in a project's lifecycle, so it makes sense to use npx to install it. And create React app points to a JavaScript file that is executed within the node environment. So it is a global tool that helps to do checks while the actual setup is done by React scripts, which are installed in the project. Like here, you'll see that we're installing a bunch of stuff, and it'll probably take a while. And what's going to happen after all this installation is done is here you can see there's already a folder called My App that was created. So once you finish installing all this and you open up your folder, there's going to be a bunch of files here, which is the boilerplate template of code for a React website. So I'm going to go on to explain what the next lines do while we wait for that. So cd my app. Actually, I didn't finish explaining this line. So we know this is just a command line utility. This is something that grabs files off the internet for you to get your React app. And what is this? This is just a variable or a name that you're giving your new folder. So earlier when we were in our file explorer or folder, or folder drive, we created, I created a folder called workshop. Inside the workshop folder, what I'm saying is I'm going to create this new app called My App. So the next line is cd my app. Cd stands for change directory. So change directory, basically you can imagine stepping into the next folder. So what this means is from my folder workshop, I'm going to step into the folder one layer in called My App. So here you see there's workshop, and then if you step down one layer, you have My App. That is what cd does. And here we have something called npm start. So instead of npx, npm stands for Node Package Manager, and Node Package Manager is basically two things. The first thing you can think of it is an online repository for the publishing of open source Node projects, which is not what we need it for. But the second thing, which is more important to this workshop, is it's a command line utility for interacting with repositories that help in package installation, version management, and dependency management. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch of errors, but it's okay. You just keep waiting for it to install. Yeah, so npm will help us to start everything and grab all the dependencies to run. All right, so we can see there's 1,593 packages. You guys might have more or less. And it is still installing, but yeah, if anyone is stuck at this point, please message on Slack.
Christy, as a general note, maybe slow down a bit, and also to everyone who is participating and you're stuck anywhere, please message Slack, and then we will assign you to a breakout room from there.
Sounds good. Yeah, we're just gonna wait for this to install a bit. Hopefully it's still installing for everyone. All right, so if you see the happy hacking message, then that should mean your installation is complete and working. And if you don't, then we will be having a 5-minute break right after this point, and everyone who has it can take the break, but like if you don't have it, then we'll try to help you as TAs. But what is the general response? Does everyone kind of get to this part okay? All right, I'm just gonna finish the next steps, and if you're stuck, yeah, definitely during the break, you can try to help out. So I just copied the second line of code, cd my app. So as mentioned earlier, cd stands for change directory. Sorry, my Mac is lagging. So here, I paste that in and I press enter again. So you can see in this terminal, I was in the folder workshop, and now once I cd'd into my app, I changed directory into my app. So I'm stepping into here. And why is it important for us to change into my app? So what happens is when we run npm start, what we want it to do is it'll launch a screen out in your local browser, and it will have, actually, I'll just show what that does. So I type in npm start, or you can copy and paste it from the code snippets. And what's going to happen is we have our React script starting, which is built in everything you just installed. And once it starts running and it finishes running and compiling, then the website will pop up, and we'll see that really quick. So let me drag this over here. So this is called a local host environment. And what's happening is it's just building what your code has on your own computer. Local just means it's absolutely on your own computer. Nobody else can access it unless you push it out to a cloud or upload it onto Git, that sort of thing. So all it's doing is taking the code within this template and making it out on this site. And it does tend to take a bit of time to load, or maybe my laptop is just lagging. So if you want to confirm if your CD line is working, all you need to do is look at your terminal. So yeah, here it says compiled successfully, but let me see if I can scroll up. My laptop is very laggy at the moment. Okay, I will get back to this. But here, this is our very basic React deployment template. It's just scripts and files that were pulled down from React itself, like from the stuff created by Facebook. So this is a ready to use website that you can just modify on your own, which is really nice because it's already pre-built. And I was going to explain why we have to cd into my app before we run npm start. So in order for npm start to work, it actually has to be in the same file folder as our package JSON. So this file, I won't get into too much detail, but it lists a bunch of dependencies. So you can think of dependencies as what you need in order for this to work. So like this thing depends on that, which depends on another thing, which depends on another thing. And this file basically just tracks all of those relationships so that it can install new things or like run these relationships if needed. So when we do npm start, As I mentioned earlier, npm is supposed to help with installation of dependencies. That's why it's very important to be in the same folder as where your package.json is. So if everyone can get this screen, then you have successfully gotten through a quarter of the workshop. And right now, we're gonna move in to our 5-minute break. It is currently 5:53, so maybe we can gather 5:59, or like, let's just make it 6. We can gather back at 6. And if you have any questions, we will be on Slack monitoring the channel as well as dragging people into breakout rooms. Thank you, Anne. All right, so now what we're gonna do is more personalization to our code. So we're gonna install something called Material UI, and this will just be components. I'll explain more while it's installing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna navigate to our code snippets again, gonna copy this line to my clipboard, and I'll just wait a bit for everyone to make sure that it's this line here, installing Material UI. Copy that. And if your terminal looks like mine, where it's still running, that's fine. It's still in your local host. That means, all that means is you can still access your app here and it's still running off of that. But what you wanna do right now is you wanna exit out of that. So how we're gonna do that is go onto your keyboard, like where you type your stuff, and click Control-C. So that's for Windows and Mac users, Control-C. And once you click Control-C, you should see you're back at My App, or whatever you chose to call your new app. And I'll repeat again, it's Control-C. All right, after that, from that code snippet document, I copied the install for Material UI. So I'm gonna paste that. So now that it's in my terminal, I'm gonna click Enter. And basically this will just do a faster installation than our Create React app earlier, but it'll still take a bit of time. So I'm gonna go back to our slides and kind of talk about what this is. So, what is Material UI? It's a framework of components developed by Google by React. So these components, they might look kind of familiar to you. These are like buttons, these are little toggles, text boxes, a nav bar. You might have seen these in mobile apps, web apps. They look very generic, right? So these are actually pre-built in this exact form by Google, and we can find those here at this site, the Material UI site. So as I mentioned earlier, they have all these really cool pre-built components that we can go through. So they have so many on the side that you can scroll through from. I'll just go to a few. They have tables, and my computer is quite laggy, so it's taking a bit. So they have like, you can have a table pre-built into your web app ready. There's avatars, which are really cool. These are like little faces or icons. And you can have progress bars. So like these spinning progress bars. So I'm gonna go back to our app bar. This is one of the things that we're gonna be doing. So all you really have to do for this piece of code, or for this app bar to pop up in your app itself, all you have to do is open up this source code. So there's this button here that says show the full source. And what this is saying this is the code that is used to create this app bar right here, which is really cool because you can just copy and paste this exact piece of code, just Control A and then Control C, and then paste it into your own code, and you'll have this really cool app bar. And like I mentioned earlier, React is quite popular with TypeScript right now as well. So they also have like a TypeScript version right there. but for today's purpose only, we're going to be focusing on JavaScript or JSX here. So yeah, this is a bit on Material UI site. So if it is finished installing properly, we should see that it says it's installed here, and it should not have the loading bar anymore. We should be back at my app or whatever you chose to call your app, and that will be great. Also, if you click into package.json on the left-hand side here at this bar, and if you don't have that, there's this little icon here in VSCode where you click on it and it shows you all of your files. And under My App, if your My App is closed like that, you just open it up. You can see there's a package.json. If you click into it, if you single click, then a tab will open up. If you double click, then the tab will stay there. And here at this tab, we will notice that we just added something called Material UI/core. So this will just indicate that our installation for Material UI is complete. And again, if you have any questions or are stuck on this point, then message in the Slack. All right, now we're gonna try to make our website use Google Fonts. So I'm sure everyone knows like what fonts are, but Google has a really cool free variety of fonts that you can use in your projects. So here, there's many different dancing script styles. So I'll just kind of teach you how you can choose to select a font and add it into your own project. So let's say we wanted to select this dancing script. So all you have to do is go to this website, you click select this style, and you can see at the top here that there will be a button. You guys don't actually need to navigate to this website because we will have all the code in the code snippets for you to copy and paste, but I just wanted to show how we actually do it. So I added that style and I click into my selected families. Normally it starts here at review, but if I go to embedded, there will be a link here which just kind of shows how this is the exact code for us to use this dancing script font if we wanted to in our project. And you can just easily copy and paste this into your code, and again, all of it will be in Roboto font then. So now I'll just show how it's actually done within our app. So we're gonna add the link tag code inside our index.html under public, which is a folder, and I'll show these in slower steps. Oh, all right. So back at our code snippets document. So one thing I also want everyone to note is at every single step here, there's a longer code snippet at the bottom, which is for all the code for that document so far. So if for some reason your code didn't copy and paste properly, you can just delete everything on that file, select all of it, press backspace, and then just copy and paste in this new snippet of code. But that's just if it doesn't work for you. But what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna copy this piece of code, this link component, to my clipboard. I'll just wait for everyone to do that. So again, it's adding Google Roboto font. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go put our cursor at my app. And if we come down, there's this thing called public with a toggle. So that means it's a folder in VSCode. So if I click under public, there's a bunch of different files here. So the file I want to go to is index.html. So I'm gonna double click that. So once you double click, you'll see this big file here, and there's a lot of code in gray. So these are all just code that is commented out, which means when this code is compiling or when it's running, all of this stuff in gray doesn't get read. So what I'm gonna do, just to save some space when demoing, I'm gonna remove all my comments first. And you can do the same, or you can choose to leave it in there. It might be easier to just comment all of it out so you don't have as much code to look at. So now I got rid of all of the gray, and I'll just give some time for people to catch up. And again, from my code snippet document, I copied this line of code. What I'm gonna do is at line 13, which says link rel manifest, I'm gonna press enter there, and then I'm at a new line now. I'm gonna paste that line of code. So this line calls the Google API for that Roboto font that we will be using, and therefore we'll be able to access it. And API you can just think of as a messenger for our project to communicate with Google's fonts. So through this messenger, Google is able to pass us the font, and from us, we can send information back to Google Fonts as well. But that's just a very, very simple kind of description of what API is. So once we have this, we want to save this file. So click Control Save or Command S, whatever you like. And we're not going to touch index.html anymore. So, and earlier I just closed the package.json, so nothing to worry about there. I'm going to go back to our slides. And now we're going to add a header. So it's the app bar, the blue bar we saw at the top. So what I'm going to do is go back to my code snippets. Now we're at app bar from material UI, and we're going to go into the app.js file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line of code first. Oh. Just the import app bar from app material UI, etc. And I'll just give some time to wait for people to catch up. So again, we're copying just this one line, import app bar from app material UI /core/app bar. So once you have that line copied, again, you see I put my cursor here on the My App folder. If I keep navigating down, there's something that says SRC. So that's another folder that we want to open up now. And within SRC, there's actually a bunch of different files that we can work with. But for the purpose of today's workshop, all we're going to be modifying is app.js, this file over here. Again, app.js. So I'm going to double click on app.js, and that will open up that file for me. So if we see in app.js, there's a bunch of import statements at the top. So I had an import statement that I just copied in my clipboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new line here and paste that import statement in. So now I have a new line of import statement for the app bar from material UI. And I'll just wait a second for people to catch up. So what app.js does is basically, this is where the code goes to at first to run the stuff. So if you recall when I was talking about what React is just a bunch of components to build a website. So in app.js, you can, in more difficult apps, this would be where you tell all the different navigations of, like all the different components of the app, like where they would navigate to. But since our app is quite simple, this is where we're going to be stacking all of our components so that we can build up our website. So now we're going to go back to code snippets and copy the next part. This is a div component. So it says here, we're going to replace everything within the return inside function app with this code. So hopefully everyone has that copied. So we have function app here. This is the meat of the project, and there's a return statement. So everything inside the return statement is what is going to be rendered on our web app screen. So when you click on like the local host or after you deploy it, what shows up on that screen is what you have written inside the return statement. So for time's sake, what we're going to do is just delete all of that. So what I did, I'll go back and show it again. So previously, inside the return statement, there was this big div with a bunch of stuff. So if we look at like our local host app, I'm just getting rid of all of this here. So there's like the logo, and then there's this text that says edit. So see, it says edit, and then src app.js and save to reload. So I'm gonna get rid of everything inside that return statement and paste in divs. So here I noticed that the formatting is kind of wonky. So I'm gonna use a shortcut to fix this, fix my formatting. I'm gonna press Command-K, Command-F. That will fix the formatting. Or alternatively, if you don't know the shortcuts, you can highlight, right-click, and format selection. And I'll just leave it here at the screen. So again, you just highlight the snippet of code that doesn't look like it's formatted properly, and then you right-click on it, then you click format selection right here, and that will help to clean up your code. And there should be a shortcut right next to it on what keys you need to press. So for Mac users, it's Command-K, Command-F. All right, and what I'm gonna do now is Control-S or Command-S to save that current file of app.js. So what I pasted into this function app currently is a component called AppBar, which I took from Material UI. So if you remember when we were browsing the Material UI website earlier, there were a bunch of pre-built components, like very generic things that we could have taken from. So I chose to take the AppBar from Material UI. And here inside this return statement, I can return that AppBar component. So this is saying I want to render a component that looks like an AppBar. And within my AppBar, I want to have some text displayed. So if you've ever worked with like Microsoft Word, you might notice that there's templates where it's like header 1, header 2, header 3, header 4. So similarly with code, we have H1 that stands for header 1, which is a big size font. Header 2 is a smaller size font, header 3 is even smaller, header 4 even smaller, etc. So with this header 1, we're displaying some words saying my header. So after you click Control-S or Command-S, I want you to go back to your terminal here at the bottom. And if you did close your terminal, I will just remind. So you can just click terminal here at the top and then new terminal. So let's say you did accidentally close your terminal. So notice we are in the workshop folder right now. At our command line, what we need is to get to our my app folder, which has our package.json file. That's how we can run our local host. So since my terminal disappeared because I exited out of it, I'm gonna go back into that folder. So whatever your folder name here is, you're gonna write CD and then whatever name you have and click enter. If you were already in the folder that you need to be in, then obviously you can skip that step and just stay there and wait. And here I'll just pause to make sure everyone's caught up. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna type in npm start. So it's the same command we did earlier, which will launch our local host. So this time when our local host launches, it won't be the default template for the React app anymore. We will have our own function app with just a single app bar and a header. So it's starting the development server, and here it's reloading my local host app. You can see here it's spinning, so it's reloading. I'm just going to give it some time because it takes a while. All right, so if you recall earlier, there was like the React icon in the middle and like some text here. Now we have this app bar at the top of our screen, as well as the words my header here. So if you see the screen, then that's exactly what you should be seeing. If you don't see the screen and there's an error message instead, message in Slack. And again, TAs will try to help and redirect you back to this screen. I'll just give it a few more seconds in case some are loading a bit slower. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna stylize our header. So if you notice back at our local host where we see what we just created, this my header wording, it's very close to the edge. It doesn't look very pretty. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to make this prettier by stylizing it. And how we're gonna do that, I won't explain exactly what is happening for this part, but like we're gonna be importing some tools to help us. So by importing tools, I mean we're gonna be using other people's tools to help us. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy these two statements from stylizing app bar. So again, the first two import statements from stylizing app bar, copy and paste those, or just copy those for now. And we're gonna navigate back to our code. So inside our code, if you can see, we have the import statements all at the top. So click the wrong button. All right, you see we have the import statements all at the top. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press space to add another line again, and I'm gonna paste those two new import statements down under the import app bar that I just created. So all I did was I added a new line, and then I pasted two import statements below the import app bar. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna get rid of import logo from logo.svg because we're no longer using the React logo in our web app. This is from the template, so I'm gonna get rid of this statement here. So in total right now, you should have 5 import statements. So in case you missed what I just did, all I did was import logo from logo.svg. I deleted that single line, so just backspace there. And now you have 5 import statements to end off with. And we're gonna go back to our code snippets now. So finally, we have this code that we wanna copy. And we're gonna replace what? So again, from stylizing app bar, we're gonna copy and paste, copy the second snippet of code. And I'm gonna navigate back to VS Code now. So here in VS Code, you can see there's function app, then it says return, then there's the kind of angly brackets with div in it, and underneath there's app bar, and then header 1, and then app bar again. So what I'm gonna do is remove this app bar in the middle, this part here in the middle. I'm gonna delete all of that. So I'll just show that again. There was return, div, app bar, header 1, app bar, and then div. So all I'm doing is deleting everything that is sandwiched between the div. So I delete the app bar, and from my clipboard, I paste the new stuff. And again, I will select this code to refactor it so formatting is better. Just help this one out a little. So all I did was delete what is sandwiched in between the two div tags. And then I pasted in the new snippet of code from our code snippet document. And then I formatted it so that it looks like everything is matching up with the lines. All right, so with this new code, we can see that we have, again, the app bar component. Within the app bar component, we have something called toolbar. So this is one of the tools we took from Material UI to help us make things look nicer. And we also have typography, which will also make things look nicer. So how we change the color for the app bar, we can change it here. If we go to the documentation on Material UI's website, we can find different color schemes that we can change this to for these inline styling components, but we don't need to worry about those for now. So basically, if I press Control S or Command S right now, you can see that my terminal at the bottom immediately kind of re-rendered, and it said compiling, and now it's compiled successfully. So if I go back, now we see the font here is smaller, and it's no longer at the edge of the screen. It's at the side now, and it still says my header. So what if I didn't want it to say my header? That'd be very simple. We just take this and replace it whatever you want. So I'm gonna say hello user instead. I'm gonna have that as the name of my app, but you could put your name, put anything you want. And here again, it says compiled successfully. So I go back to my page and it says hello user instead of, I don't even remember what it said before, but yeah, it changed to hello user now. All right. And so yeah, this is what it looks like so far. You should have the gap as well as a smaller font. And if you chose to change the name, then you'll have the different name there. So yeah, hit the buttons now on Zoom, and if you could do a poll maybe.
Yeah, hi Christy, could we just take like a few minutes to like let the people in breakout rooms catch up?
Yes, there is a 10-minute break.
Wow.
Yeah, right on time. All right, so I guess we'll regather maybe like 6:41, and if need be, maybe like add 5. Actually, let's do 6:45. I feel like we need those extra few minutes. Yeah. So what I did again is go to our code snippets, grab this import text field. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, go back to VS Code, hit enter right underneath all of our other import statements to create a new line. And I'm going to paste that new import statement for the text field right underneath all of the other imports. So I'm getting a text field component from Material UI. And as I mentioned earlier, like React is a bunch of components in a web page. So what we're going to do is add that component right underneath our app bar and literally like underneath the code as well. So I'm going to paste that. Oh, that's the import statement. Sorry. We go back to our code snippets, grab the rest of the code here, copy onto our clipboard, and paste right underneath the app bar. So again, this looks ugly, so I'm gonna fix it up. The shortcut, if you forgot, is Command K, Command F for Mac users, and I'm not sure for Windows users, but again, what you can do on VS Code is select what you want to format, right click, and format selection. So there we go. So right now what we have is on our page, we have an app bar. Below that app bar, we have this thing called a break. So that will just leave us a little space. And then we have our text field component. This is what these little green variables here is what we call inline styling. So it just kind of tells us how we want this text field component to be. And this is kind of harder, like, I guess, not within the scope of what we're doing today. But if you wanted to change this text field and customize it more to your liking, you can go back to the Material UI website and find a list of all of their properties, which is props or all of their labels for these fields to adjust what you want your text field to be. So here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit save, Command S or Control S. Again, it's compiling, and then when it's finished, it'll say finish compiling or compile complete. And then if I navigate back to my localhost app and reload it, or it's reloading itself right now, I see, wow, I have a text field component now. So here you can see you can like edit, type things in, pretty cool, it's interactive. And if I reload it again back to its original form, so it says helper text, default value, some important text. If I go back to my code, I see, hey, helper text, default value, some important text. Wow, so it's exactly those fields. So all you have to do to change the labels there, which we'll do later, is just change these inline styling. But I'll leave this for now and get back to this in a sec. So hopefully when everyone hits save, and if your local host is still running, you are able to get this text field to pop up at the side where it does not look very good. And if you don't, again, message in Slack and you will get your questions answered or put into the Zoom breakout room. And now I'll go back to our slides. What we're gonna do is we're gonna center that text box because it doesn't actually look good at all off to the side. So again, to our code snippets document, I'm gonna scroll past that. So it's centering the text field. So I have this small snippet of code here that I'm gonna copy. It starts from style with parentheses and then it ends with like the closing of the parentheses. I'm gonna copy that onto my clipboard. Now I'm gonna go back to VS Code. So earlier I mentioned how these are something called inline styling. So these are attributes to describe or like think of them as descriptions of what the text field component is. So what I want to do is press enter right after the line with helper text. So again, I'll go back. So I just am at line 25 here with helper text inside the text field component. I'm going to press enter to make a new line. And I'm going to paste that code in here. And now it looks ugly, so I'm going to style it up or fix it up. So here it says ID, label, default value, helper text, and then I have style. And then inside style, this is just telling me where this component is going to go in the page, hence it's called position. So I'm saying it's left 50%, top 50%, which is exactly in the middle, in the center of our page. And we can just ignore the transform for now. But this will help us to put our text box from the very top corner of our page right back down into the middle where we want it. So I'm gonna hit Command S or Control S to save, and it will automatically reload and re-render back to our local host. And voila, it's here in the middle of the page now. So I'll just wait here a bit. So all I did was I copied and pasted the stylizing, I think it's called centering text field, app.js. I copied and pasted the style underneath helper text. And then I saved it and everything re-rendered. And now we have our text box in the center of the page, which is where we want it. So I see a question on Slack about putting styling into CSS. Yes, you can put styling into CSS, but like in this format, it's like inline styling. So for us, I just want to keep it easy where we stay within one file. So you can just put it inline into our text field component. But technically, yes, you could do all your styling in app.css as well, but I won't get into the details of what a CSS file is. All right, I'm gonna continue moving on. After centering the text box, we're gonna add a hello message. So what I'm gonna do is kind of explain how the snippet of code works first. So we're gonna be using something called a use state hook, which is fairly new, but a super simple feature to React. And it comes with something called a use effect, which we won't be using today, but they're basically the bread and butter hooks for React, and it's very commonly used right now. So what is a use state hook? It allows the developer to remember the state of the page and its variables. So that might sound super confusing, but just think about taking a snapshot of exactly what is happening on this page right now. So nothing is moving, it is static. Well, let's say things were changing. So at every single millisecond or whatever that the state changes, it will capture that. And that is what a state is. So I know it's very confusing, but you don't actually have to understand the complete details of what it is. But I'll just kind of I'll just go through a bit more detail about what this is. So here in this line on our slides, const my value set value equals react.useState. So here from my React library, I'm calling this useState hook. Inside the parentheses, this is what I'm using to initialize my variable, my value. My value is just a variable. It can be of any type. Since we haven't specified a type, we're not using TypeScript. So here we see that my value is actually a string with the brackets, the angle brackets name. So if you could recall in the example I had of what the finished product was, at first when there was nothing in the text box, it just said text in the text box. At the bottom, the display message said hello and then angle brackets name. So this is the initial state of the page. This is why we put in name there. So what this set value property does, or this second attribute in these parentheses, this is a function. So what this function does is it will change this variable every single time it is called. So whatever is passed into this function, this variable will update to that value. So initially, my value is just angle bracket name. But let's say I called set value with Christy, then my value will return Christy whenever I try to access this value. So that's a lot of information. If you're a beginner, you don't have to actually understand any of this at all, but I just want to kind of touch on what we're using. And later on, within our text box, there's also another attribute to it, which is on change. So in our original demo of the final product, every single time we change what is in the text field, we are able to have it update the display message at the bottom. So this on change function is exactly what allows that to happen. So with on change, it takes in an event E, and event would be whenever the person is changing that text field, and it calls the function set value, which is, as I mentioned above, this function, whatever is passed into this function will update this my value variable to that new value that it was passed. So we're passing in the event's target value. And what the event target value is what the user chooses to enter into the text field box. So I'm just gonna pause and let everyone digest that a little. But again, to repeat, we have an event that we're passing into this new function. This is shorthand for writing a function. And you don't really need to know how to do this, but I just wanted to explain. But set value is that function we create with our use state hook. So once we pass a new text that the user puts into their text field, it will update that my value variable into whatever was inside the text field box. So after that, what we're gonna do, actually, I'll go back to our code first before I continue explaining. So we're gonna go to our code snippets, and we're gonna add our use state hook. So I'm gonna copy that line under displaying hello message. And I'm gonna go back to the same file, app.js in VS Code. So all along before this, we were modifying our code within the return. So this is the return. So there's the open parentheses and it closes here. So everything inside was what we were dealing with, and we added a bunch of import statements. But right now, what we're doing, we don't want other people on the outside to see. So that's something we're putting outside of the return, but still within the function. We're gonna add that useState hook. So this is just stuff that your computer or like your local host will be seeing, and well, actually no, I shouldn't phrase it like that, but basically this is not going to be rendered onto your local host app. So after that, I'm going to go back to my code snippets and copy this on change line. So again, under displaying hello message, there is one line of code that starts with on change. I copy that onto my clipboard, and now I go back into my return and I go to my text field component. So you see that there's text field here and it ends right here at this little caret. So underneath the style, so style, the brackets open here and it ends here. So I'm gonna press enter again to get a new line. So again, where we are is inside our function app, inside the return, right underneath text field, or right inside text field, we have style. And right underneath style, I added a new line, and I'm gonna paste on change into there. So like I mentioned earlier, this will just let us remember the state of what the text field box has. So what that state will help us indicate is what the user types into the text field box so that we can display that onto our message. But right now, we don't actually have a message to display yet. So I'm gonna go back to our code snippets document, and I'm gonna copy and paste the rest of the code. So here I highlighted the third part to that code block. So again, under displaying hello messages, I highlighted the third part of the code block. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. And now I just added the on change here. So I see text field. If I click here right at the left side of that caret looking parameter, I see it ends over here. So I'm going to click enter right underneath the text field component. So again, underneath the text field component. So after you see the black backslash with the greater sign, you hit enter to get a new line, and this is where you will paste that new code. And I will fix up this. And it's still not fixed properly, so I will help it out a little. There we go. So here we have everything properly aligned. What this does is, again, we have our text field. So let's start from the top of our return. We have our app bar, then we have our text field component, and now we're gonna add header. So if you could recall, header, as I mentioned, like think of it as your Microsoft Word templates. You might have like header 1, that's big text, header 2, smaller text, header 3, even smaller, etc. So we're gonna have the biggest text, and we're gonna style it. So very similar to the text field. Again, we have this inline styling where we put the position this time left 50%. So horizontally, it is right in the middle, but vertically, we're gonna put it 60% down from the top. So this will basically put it right underneath our text field component. And here, normally you could write any message within like a H1 component or like a header component, but what I'm gonna choose to do is I'm gonna have hello, and then this is the variable my value. So in order to put variables into the JSX like this, you have to use these squiggly brackets, and I'm gonna access the value inside this variable my value. So at first, when the user doesn't do anything, that value is just what it's instantiated with, which is the caret brackets and name. So we have hello, the caret brackets name, exclamation mark. But once my value gets updated, when does my value get updated? It gets updated when the user gives it a new target value event. Once that event triggers this function, then set value will tell, hey, my value, you need to get updated to that new input that the user just put into the text field. Then right away, we will see that our display message will have the stuff that you're writing in the text field. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click Command S or Control S, save, and again, it's compiling. Now it says compiled successfully. If I go back, yay, it says hello name. All right, so before I test it out, I actually want to also change these text here. So what I want, let me just double check. I want name, text, and let us say hello. So here in our text field component, if you find the label text field, we're going to go to our label, and instead of helper text, we're going to change this to name. And then instead of default value, we'll just have text. And I'm going to change my helper text to let us say hello. So you can change all of these to anything you want, but this is just some default values I'm going to use. Again, now I'm going to click Command S or Control S for it to recompile. And here it is reflected right away. So now I'm going to test it out. I'm going to change this. Yep, it works right away. Once I deleted that, that was gone. I'm going to say hello world, and it works. So this is basically the final product of our very simple, very simple React app. And if you actually did the optional component, we will now be moving on to deployment of the app. So this is optional and only if you did the pre-work for the optional part. And if you didn't, just feel free to like watch along. It's pretty cool. And I'm just gonna give maybe 10-15 seconds for people to catch up. So this is what it's supposed to look like at the end once you refresh everything. And all we did was add one line of code right underneath function app. And I later changed the labeling here of what I wanted the text box to say. You don't have to. And I added an on change within this text field component. Then finally, we added this new snippet of code where it's the display message with a header one component. And within that display message, I'm calling this variable my value, which is updated from that use state hook that we were using. All right, so now we're gonna go into app deployment. Congratulations on finishing that. That was a lot. All right, so this is also gonna be a lot. We're gonna type all of this code into the terminal one line at a time. Again, refer to your code snippets, and I'll explain what each line does while like the stuff is running. So we're gonna go back to our code snippets. So let's copy and paste this first line. So again, since my local host is still running, how I exit out of this is click Control C. For both Mac and Windows users, Control C. So once I click Control C, I stop my local host from running. And I'm just going to give a sec. Again, Control C to stop your local host from running. And now I'm going to paste, oh, my bad, pasted the wrong thing. I am going to paste git init into my terminal and press enter. So for mine, it says reinitializing this Git repository because I already have it already, but for everyone else, it should say that you're initializing a new Git repository unless you already have something with the same name. All right, and For Windows users, I strongly recommend that you run this line of code where it says set execution policy. And that's for Windows users only. Mac users, no need to run this, but strongly recommended. Run this line of code. So all this does is it allows your terminal to run as admin, because Heroku tends to need that. So while the Windows users do that, I am actually gonna copy and paste this next line of code. So we're gonna paste that in, and I'll explain what all this code does while it's building later or deploying, because that takes a while as well. And paste that into my terminal and press enter. And what this is doing is it's asking Heroku to create a new repository for you, or a new website here. So I have something called Pacific Ridge 86166. So that's something that Heroku just helped me created. And for everyone after that, copy and paste git add all. You copy this and paste it into the terminal. For me, I'm just gonna copy and paste this line just because I need to, because I get errors if I don't do that. But you guys do not, everyone else does not need to follow me for this one. Just copy and paste git add all. All right, so I'm gonna copy and paste git add all now. All right, and that should have executed really quickly. So what this dot stands for is all, as I was saying. So it just adds all your files to that git commit or whatever you're trying to do next. So now, speaking of git commits, we're gonna commit this to Git. So Git is just an online place to store all of your files, long story short. We're gonna paste that in and commit, and everything within these kind of parentheses is just a message we're putting with our commit. So you could write anything there, but I just chose to copy and paste finish React app. So here it tells me that like I changed for files, had insertions, blah, 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 and it's all in my master branch now. So I'll just slow down a bit here because I realized I went a bit faster. So to repeat what just happened, I copied and pasted git init to initialize the Git repository. Then for Windows users only, copy and paste the execution policy to run your terminal as admin. Then you're gonna go to this third line of Heroku create to create your Heroku build pack. And I'll explain more about this later. And then we ended off at Git. Oh, actually, no, we didn't end there. We added all of our files to Git, and then we ended at committing all of those files to Git with our message, finish creating simple React app. Now what we're gonna do is copy and paste the next line, git push Heroku, and back to my terminal. So I'm gonna paste that in and press enter. All right, this happened to me yesterday, but I thought I fixed it. All right, so if you press enter, git push Heroku, that should have worked. Let's see, all right, there we go. So you shouldn't have to do that, but this will be pushing all of our stuff, all of the code that we just wrote to that Heroku link, so that later when this is basically the deployment part, actually. I will go back to the slides because that takes a long time, and I'll explain what is happening. So what is Heroku? It's a cloud platform as a service, which is PaaS, and a definition of that is complete development and deployment environment in the cloud. So the client or user, you, do not need to deal with any of the implementation or private servers. And developers can build, run, and operate applications entirely on the cloud. So what is a Heroku build pack? That is what we just used to very simply, with a few lines of terminal code, deploy our app. It's created by Heroku to automate build processes. And they have it for a bunch of different languages. So this was a React build pack. They have stuff for Python, they have stuff for C++, Java, etc. And we're just using that build pack to allow us to deploy our simple web page onto the cloud. And what is app deployment? Because that might sound very strange to you. When you write the code for an app on your computer, everything is local. So software deployment refers to the process of making the application work on a target device. So what might be a target device? That could be somebody else's computer, somebody else's mobile device, just anybody's anything that can run that website could be a target device. So when you're deploying stuff, it's just TLDR, you're letting the public access it. So once you configure like a specific domain with your deployment, then people can navigate to that domain or like URL and see your app. But for our workshop purposes, we're not going to make a specific domain. We're just going to use the one that Heroku gives us. And all local changes after the deployment will not be seen by the public unless it's redeployed. So let's say I went back to my code here and I changed a bunch of stuff. Like instead of saying hello user, I put it back to, or I called it my app, but then I didn't redeploy it. If I just run npm start in my terminal, in my local host, I will see that my app bar at the top, it'll say my app. But then if I go to the link or the website that I deploy to, I will not be able to see my app. I will continue seeing hello user. So that is basically the difference from not deploying your app and deploying your app. If you don't deploy, you only ever see it on your local host and only your computer can run it unless you can share your local host link with someone else. So mine says it's done. So here there's a link. It says, after it says verifying deploy ... done, it says to, and there's a link. So if I click this link, it will bring me to my webpage, or alternatively, I could type Heroku open, and you don't actually need to type that because you can copy and paste from our code snippets here. So the last line on our code snippets is Heroku open. You just press enter on your terminal and it should prompt the web page to open up in another browser, as it did for me. So voila, this is your own app. And we're done deploying. So you can share this link with your friends and they can access it, they can see it, they can play around with this. And we are finished with our very simple React app, simplest hack ever. So we're gonna wrap it up, or actually I'll give some time for everyone to catch up on the app deployment. Basically what happened after the commit message was I ran this line, git push Heroku master. And what this does is it puts all of your code to the Heroku cloud. And from Heroku, they generate that specific URL or website for you to make it easier to understand. They have that pre-made website with all of your code on it. And then you're able to access that website via the link they provide. And that is your fully deployed app. And then afterwards, I just ran Heroku open. So ignore this line of code if you didn't have Heroku before. But yeah, that's it. So I'm going to continue to wrap it up because we're almost at time. So you did it. What did you learn today? You learned to use an IDE, which is just VSCode. It's a development environment because you just installed that or maybe had it before, and you learned to navigate that, go through the folders, that sort of thing. There's a lot more features to VSCode that you can try as well. And we learned to create a React app, which is using the npx create React app command on your terminal. And we learned to use a use state hook, which is really cool because it's new and exciting. And we did simple Heroku deployment via their Heroku build pack. And we're using React components. So before you leave, a really big shout out to all the TAs who helped answer all the chaotic messages and like help debug everything in our Slack channel as well here on Zoom, and all of the workshop material helping debug through that. And after that, nwPlus is hiring for the organizing team and campus ambassador program. So you can check out the hiring package on Facebook or at this bit.ly, or Carmen will be dropping the links into our Zoom chat so you can follow those. So the organizing team is for UBC students. The campus ambassador program is for non-UBC students. And please do follow at nwPlus UBC for all of our social medias. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Medium, TikTok. And additionally, please do show us what you made today and tag us in your stories at nwPlus UBC so you can be featured there. And finally, one last big favor is to fill out our feedback survey. So again, Carmen will be dropping the link to that in our Zoom chat. And thank you. So we will be hosting more phases soon for cmd-f to lead up to our annual hackathon. And those dates and details will be posted very soon. Slides, recording, and all the material for this current workshop will be posted soon as well for you to review or to share with your friends. And there's also an nwPlus info session workshop coming up. So make sure to grab your friends and attend that one. And thank you so much to everyone for coming to cmd-f phase 1. And I really hope you all enjoyed this. And we're done.